Andy Power, President and CEO of Digital Realty, welcome to the Property Play.
Thank you, Diana, for having me.
So Digital Realty, for those that don't know, is one of the largest operators of data centers globally. It is a company with a $52 billion market cap. It is right on the edge of AI, cloud computing, even quantum. So I want to just get right to the really hard stuff. And that is this sense among some investors, among those who talk about this space, that we're in some kind of bubble, that there's an AI bubble out there, and that translates into the real estate bubble.
Sure. So just by way of background, today we support north of 5,000 customers in 50 metropolitan areas on 6 continents. Digital Realty has solely been focused on data centers, connectivity, digital infrastructure for close to 25 years and north of 20 years as the first public data center REIT. That's where my interaction with the company really started, literally second job out of school. We are in data centers catering to diverse demand trends, so digital transformation, cloud computing, and now what I would call the very earliest days of artificial intelligence. Super more oriented towards training, building the models, getting the technology built, and very more consumer oriented. Now, I can't tell you whether our end customers, who are the likes of NVIDIA and the hyperscale cloud companies, will go up and down in this, quote, arms race of the technology. But as it relates to data centers and very much Digital Realty and our strategy.
And the real estate.
And the bricks and sticks and physical infrastructure we invest in, I see tremendous insulation towards any types of shock. We are essentially in a place where demand is well outpacing supply. So the speculative data center builds you can't build it fast enough for the customers. Many customers, high credit quality customers, are signing long-term contracts, 15-year leases for that capacity with urgency. When
we start talking about AI, though, here is a fundamental thing, and I am not a techie. I absolutely admit that. But AI is designed to make everything more efficient. And that includes AI, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this argument that folks are making that say if AI chips are getting much more powerful, in fact, we've just seen announcements that we're getting more and more powerful chips, and they become more efficient, and they therefore need less space, mm-hmm. as in less real estate. What happens then that you've built all these data centers and suddenly you don't need that much space? And it's like vacancies in housing.
So we've been living in this, call it the Moore's Law phenomenon for eons, right? My path to the company was over 20 years ago. On the IPO of the company, it was my second job out of school, building the model, fetching the coffee. Barely got this REIT IPO that is investing in technology and telecommunications over the finish line, multiple dollars below the pricing range. Nobody knew the customers, and everyone said at every meeting, why is this not going to shrink like the phones shrunk? Like they went smaller and smaller and smaller. And what's happened historically and what I see continuing is Moore's Law is happening. Things are innovating, getting smaller, but...
And that's the definition of Moore's Law for those who don't know.
Yeah, more technology, called reinvents itself, essentially gets cheaper, smaller, more efficient. And then there's other thing called Jevons paradox.
Uh-oh.
So the simple thing about this is like going back to the advent of using locomotives. Oh, that's going to change. We're not going to need horse and buggies and things like that. Well, that opened up all this different transit for goods and people, and each technology spurred another technology.
So it made it bigger.
Yeah, and what's germane to our space. So we're living in. I live in Austin, Texas now. So Waymo is a real thing. I've used it several times. That is being built on the back of Uber. Which really Uber, I was trying to think last night when my first Uber ride was. It's probably 10, 11 years ago, not even. And Uber was built on the backs of Google Maps, right? And Google Maps was built on the back of other telecommunications infrastructure investment. Each one step along the way, more need for infrastructure to support compute, networking, essentially more investments in the actual bricks and sticks to essentially facilitate the new technology.
So the efficiency argument doesn't hold water because you're more efficient, but you're creating new opportunities.
Yeah, the efficiency argument's happening, but it's losing out to the new innovation that it's being built.
Okay, so why is comparing data center stocks to NVIDIA fundamentally flawed then, if you're talking about each thing creating something else?
So we have an amazing seat in this called tremendous technological rollout, but we are doing it at a foundational level. We're building called the roads, the bridges. You could even extend that to the manufacturing facilities, to the hospitals, to the research, like the most called foundational things. And we're doing it in a called hard asset, long-lived, durable investment with places that they have to be, where there's real barriers to new supply, and then contracting for long times. So we are essentially, and we're doing it the whole data center concept is about shared infrastructure. We typically have multiple customers. We're serving 5,000 different customers. Yes, the big hyperscalers are amongst our top customers in 30, 40, 50, 60 locations. But I could tour you through one of our data centers and says, there's one hyperscaler, there's another, there's an enterprise, there's a network company. And that shared environment means we're winning as technology wins, not one winner. So,
but that's digital realty. That's your business model. When we talk about the greater landscape of hyperscalers perhaps owning some of their real estate, although they only own about 50% of it, I'm told, and then you have investors getting into the rest of it, and I want to get to that in a second. So that's digital realty's model. What about the rest of the world?
Listen, I can't tell you whether we're in an AI bubble and whether NVIDIA is going to be the kingmaker forever or others will rise up. My suspicion is you'll have many winners in this, and it won't be one winner takes all.
No losers?
Listen, I'm sure there'll be losers, but the degree of losing, I think, will be not something that actually ripples all the way through to the broader data center business, and is certainly not our business at Digital Realty. So, because we're catering to all of them in places they need to be, and if $1 trillion company becomes a $500 million or $500 billion company, that's a sad thing for that one investment in that stock, which may happen, but someone else may pick up those remains and be victors. And we're that foundational infrastructure here, and how we play it is an incrementally secure way, given the diversification, location sensitivity.
But as you said, you've got more than 20 years of experience in this space, so I want to actually have you respond not to me, but to Barry Sternlicht of Starwood Capital, who we had on recently, and he made some noise. He is heavily invested in data centers, but he has concerns about the hyperscalers, and I'm curious to get your view on what he said. He said, most of us don't build until we get a hyperscaler lease, right?
That's correct.
That's smart. You don't want to do that. So we get these from Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Oracle. What we're watching now is the creditworthiness of the tenant. And particularly Oracle, because Oracle is doing all these deals back-ended to Chat, and Chat is a startup that doesn't make money and requires hundreds of billions of dollars to grow to the scale that they want to be. So he's concerned about that financing. What do you think? So,
lots to unpack there. And I try to not zero in on one of these customers because they're all fantastic customers of digital. All those companies that you rattled off have tremendous businesses away from AI. The cloud computing, $500 billion growing at called 25-30%. The YouTubes, the Instagrams, a whole host of other business, Amazon Prime. They are all collectively going through an evolution of their business model. These are largely asset-light businesses. They were asset-light, but why they're asset-light, they were living a contradiction because they actually had preferences to actually own and build their own data centers. So we're landing at 50, but I would say historically, they would probably inch that to higher than 50% ownership. This wasn't something they ever said, I don't want to own, by and large. Oracle's probably the only exception to that, just because they were later to this game of cloud and later to the data center business. But all the other big ones, they start out of the gate saying, we want to build this, we want to own this.
But
and
it's safer not to own it, to just lease it, and then if you need to walk away at some point, isn't it?
They don't think like that because they don't believe that they're going to be walking away from these, at least in the markets where we're supporting these customers.
So it's just that the investors got in because they wanted a piece of it. So when we talk about, big institutional investors putting private capital into data centers, that's because they want a piece of this growth, not because there's not enough hyperscalers to own their own real estate.
That goes back to we and they had a shared view that this opportunity and demand was going to run so fast and be so tremendous and so long-term and durable that we knew that the hyperscalers could not do this all themselves, despite those aspirations. Now, there's a philosophical thing that I've been telling these customers well before AI, earliest days of cloud, is like, should they own it? Not because of the optionality of getting out of a lease at the end of 15 years, but what is your core competency with your dollars? Are you investing in bricks and sticks and infrastructure, or are you developing technology, cloud computing, driverless cars, sending rockets to the moon?
Quantum
Computing. I mean, the amount of things that these companies are inventing is tremendous, and the returns on those, we have a nice business model. We have attractive, call it low double digits ROIs, returns of investment, unlevered. But we're not sending rockets to the moon. we're not.
Well, I want to get to that because some people are talking about doing that with data centers. I'm going to get to that, I promise. But there's also this concern, and Brendan Wallace, the CEO of Fifth Wall, who I know you're an investor in that company. They're a prop tech investor in property technology. And he was saying, well, given how much construction of data centers, he wanted somebody to do the math because he thinks it would actually be 125% of GDP would be necessary to actually fuel what is being built right now, that there's just not enough money to go into what is being constructed.
The pace of the leasing is well outpacing the ability to construct. The demand is outstripping, and that goes all the way back to the electrons, which we could also discuss. Like the actual electrons, a little bit less about the generation, but the transmission and getting the electrons to where they need to be.
So demand is outpacing supply.
Demand is outpacing supply. You look at all of our markets, they're at the tightest vacancies the lowest vacancies they've ever been at historically.
So you keep building, you keep permitting, pre-leasing, et cetera. Is there enough electricity? Is there enough water for all of these data centers that are under construction or in the planning or in the works?
In a temporal view, this very minute, there's not. In a span of multiple years, I believe we'll figure this out as a country and as a world.
And I think figure it out. Is that?
Well, that was not meant to be a caveat or hedging statement. And I think there's a lot of misnomers in that because some folks can run off with that. You talk about the electricity. We've been building data centers for 20 plus years. It's not like we just started and threw a bunch of data centers up. We do it in the right way with our communities, and we're giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to the right organizations, the right locations to not disrupt, call it residential communities.
But there's increasing pushback locally.
There is increasing pushback, but I think that continues to raise the bar and creates our value add. We got to do it the right way. We got to be committed to doing this. We got to be an active member of the community. We can use our infrastructure, which I'll talk about in electricity, in a way that helps folks, doesn't hurt folks.
Okay, because everybody out there is saying, you build a data center in my backyard, my electric bill goes up. I don't want you here. Am I wrong?
That's a fallacy, and there's many folks from Berkeley Research to many others saying...
It was a New Yorker cartoon.
You look at the states that have data centers versus the ones that don't, the increases in power prices are minuscule relative to those. Maine has had one of the biggest increases. There's hardly any data centers in Maine. You look at what we're doing. So we are investing alongside the utilities in infrastructure. So we are help floating the bill in terms of investing in hardening. Think about then the cost model. We're consistent users. Our power doesn't go, data centers don't go on vacation. They don't react to necessarily the freezing cold days or the hot days like an average household. So we are steady payers, high percent users. So we're always paying and sharing more freight the cost versus your typical average household. It goes down during the day when most folks aren't at home, and goes up when people are at home. Holidays, depending where they are, there's fluctuations. And then think about the resiliency of the grid. Let's imagine you had a power source in a one-house town, right? That house is very single-threaded, right, to the power. And if something happens between the house and the power source, the lights go out until that's fixed. By us investing in infrastructure and bringing more power usage, we're creating a spider web that is hardening the grid and making it more reliable for all constituents, not just data center constituents, for the hospitals, healthcare systems, for the businesses, and certainly for the residents. So
are the hyperscalers doing the same? I mean, you're a big publicly traded company, right? You can do that because you're the largest operator of these data centers. Are those who are getting in, some of the smallers, even if it's the bigger hyperscalers, are they contributing the way you are?
We are 100% aligned with our customers. Our customers are many of the biggest hyperscalers.
But when they own their property.
When they own it, and also when they demand it from others. So they're continuing to push the bar, and we're there right there with them doing the same thing. They're also doing this in a sustainable framework. And that doesn't mean you build a data center and you put a wind farm or solar panels right next to it. We are doing something like that in countries like South Africa, where we're investing in 100 megawatts of that type of power in a grid that is really beleaguered and needs that investment. But by and large, everywhere else in the world, it doesn't work like that. But not only are we making those investments to get the electrons to our data centers, improve the communities, but we're also then entering into power purchase agreements that essentially get the renewable power sources, the wind, solar, built.
Is that increasingly difficult, though, now when you have an administration that is against getting things like wind and solar built?
It was never easy, right? It was never just an easy fait accompli, because these are high-risk projects.
But now they're halting those projects.
Certainly the incentives are getting pushed back, but I would say the commitment from our customers and folks like ourselves to continue to green our power and bear that cost in our operating model, in our budgets, in order to be in this business, is that commitment's been unwavering. We'll be at 90, so we operate 3 gigawatts. You remember Back to the Future, 1.21 gigawatts to power the DeLorean, so that's more than 2 of those. And then we have a runway for another 5 gigawatts on top of that. And today, what we operate, about 90% of that we have offset with some type of green power source. So not only can we help the community on the ground, but we can help the planet at the same time.
What about water, which a lot of folks don't think about, but you do need water for a data center to cool it?
You do need water, but this is probably one of the biggest misnomers. So almost all of our data centers today, 300 around the world in the global portfolio, are either a waterless system or closed loop water. So think of it as there's no evaporation and then you have to refill it from the faucet type of environment. So we make the investments and elect to do that. If you look at our total portfolio, our water use is like less than 18 California swimming pools, or excuse me, California golf courses, right? I wasn't aware of this. There's like 16,000 golf courses just in the United States, and that's less than half that are in the world. So our water use is, if you do it right, obviously you don't want to disrupt individual communities, but that's all part of the permitting process. So, but we strive, and I think I pride digital on this, but I don't think this is a universal, there's a bunch of bad guys out there. I think the industry is coalescing to trying to do this the right way.
So we're not in a bubble. You're not concerned about water, electricity. You're not concerned about demand and supply situations. What keeps you up at night?
Well, when we say we're not in a bubble, I think we are on the continuation of these technology trends like cloud computing, digital transformation, that have a long tailwind, and the earliest days of AI that I think up and to the right is going to continue to build and build and build. Will there be ups and downs along the way? I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there'll be some footfalls. I can't comment on the stock price valuations of the NVIDIAs and Oracles and Amazons or Microsofts, but these are trillion-dollar companies that have real cash flow in businesses that are investing for this innovation, and we in digital and data centers, the way we do it especially, are really trying to do it in a way that is long-term durability, that'll insulate us and cater to all those in that remit.
And from a purely real estate perspective, we are not overbuilding data centers?
We are based on the actual real demand from real customers with real long-term, called 15-year contracts. So we are not in an oversupply state today.
Okay, finally I want to talk about the future, something that I find exciting, and we're going back to space, only because the very first podcast we did for the Property Play was about making a play on warehouses around launch pads in the US, because they see this future where we build on the moon, we take these data centers that we've built on the moon and we launch them into space, because then you don't have to cool them because they're cold already. You power them with solar and you beam the data back down. And that is the future of data centers, not here on Earth, but in space.
I believe the cost model to do that at scale, like tremendous scale that we really need for the technology we're talking about, the cloud computing, the artificial intelligence, and that speed of light thing. You think North Dakota versus Northern Virginia is a far distance. Outer space is a lot farther than that. Puts that as a scalable replacement for the infrastructure we have in digital infrastructure data centers on the planet. Many, many years, lifetimes. Doubt I see it in my lifetime. Now, is space becoming an incremental innovation that's helping our data centers? We're supporting the likes of Starlink, SpaceX. Is that creating new use cases where goes back to still needs a data center, right? A new application on a device, a new application that's following a moving piece of infrastructure needs to go, the circle and the continuation of new technology begetting incremental innovation and needing more digital infrastructure. That's where I see space continuing to have a big play.
So you've been in this over 20 years. What excites you the most right now about the next 20? Is it a technology? Is it a movement? Is it quantum? What is it?
I just see so many parallels to this movie repeating itself. I think the earliest days of Netscape Navigator or AOL, my first mobile phone, which was solely for phone calls, to I was a BlackBerry rapid user when I lived in Manhattan. Traded that in for an iPhone when I moved to San Francisco.
I still have an iPod.
And I just think each of those moments feels like what we're doing right now with AI. It just feels like it's a toy. It's a quick fix. It's a consumer-oriented type of application. And then I look at each one of those like what I've dreamed what I could do over the internet when I was using Netscape Navigator, probably not even close. What I dreamed when I got my first BlackBerry, what I can do over my iPhone. And I just think this the opportunity with the technology and really embedding it into business, ways of life, scientific research, the things are just mind-blowing where this could go. And I'm excited because they'll probably never remember Andy Power, but I believe they'll remember digital realty as foundational in building this infrastructure to making all that happen.
Andy Power, thanks so much.
Thank you.